Hi, welcome to Numbers Behind the Headlines, where data tells the real story. Some individuals in the headlines claim that tariffs will bring in so much money that they will make the United States rich. When claims like this are made, it usually points, directly or indirectly, to economic growth. And the number most often used to measure that growth is GDP. So, what does GDP actually measure, and how do tariffs show up in those numbers? In this video, we'll walk through the mechanics step by step and see how tariffs can affect GDP and what they do or do not tell us about economic well being. First, let's make sure we understand what GDP represents. Gross domestic product measures the total dollar value of final goods and services produced within a country over a given period. It's commonly written as the sum of four components: consumption, investment, government spending, and net exports, which is exports minus imports. We'll focus on three of those components: consumption, government spending, and imports, since these are the components that are most directly related to tariffs. Now, let's make sure we understand what tariffs are. A tariff is a tax placed on imported goods. When goods enter the United States, the tariff is paid by the importer and collected by the US government. For example, suppose a US company imports a product valued at $100 and a 40% tariff is applied. At the border, the American importing company pays an additional $40 to the US government. The total cost of importing that good is now $140. It's important to be very clear about what's happening here. The extra $40 is not coming from another country. It's moving from the hands of a US company to the US government. From the country's perspective, there is no net increase in wealth. Money has changed hands internally. Government revenue increases, but the nation as a whole does not become richer. From a GDP perspective, however, something important happens. If the good is still purchased, GDP records the full $140 as spending, not the original $100. Measured consumption increases even though the physical product has not changed. Next, consider what happens if consumers respond to tariffs by buying domestic products instead of imports. Imports decrease and domestic production increases. Because imports are subtracted in the GDP calculation, a reduction in imports mechanically raises GDP. At the same time, domestic production adds to GDP. This shift can raise GDP even if the domestic goods are more expensive or less efficient to produce. GDP captures economic activity, not efficiency or value for money. Now, let's consider government revenue. The tariff payments collected at the border becomes government income. When the government spends that revenue, it increases the government spending component of GDP. At this point, GDP may rise through higher prices, increased domestic production, and higher government spending. All three effects are recorded as economic growth. However, it's important to note what GDP does not measure. GDP does not distinguish between higher prices and higher output. It does not measure purchasing power, household budgets, or whether consumers are better off. The tariff revenue collected by the government comes from within the economy. It represents a transfer from consumers and businesses to the public sector, not new wealth created from outside the country. As a result, GDP can increase even if households face higher prices and reduced choices. If there's a claim in the news that you've seen recently that made you stop and say, I don't understand that number, feel free to share it here. If you want to start your journey in data driven analysis, check out simplermath.org. And if you'd like data driven looks at numbers behind the news, subscribe to Numbers Behind the Headlines. Links to additional discussion ideas, data sources, and real world statistics are included below.